Hi class, this is the third week of our course, Christian Theology and Popular Culture, and we are going to deal with the subject of the rise of individualism or individuality. I think you've all experienced this in your own life. You know, when you're first born, you're not too independent. You're totally dependent upon your parents or parent to raise you, and they make most of the decisions, especially when you're younger. But as you grow older, the authority of the parents as far as day-to-day living and some of the decision making goes down, and hopefully you've been trained to make right decisions as you grow older, and you become more of an individual, not always looking to your parents for every decision. And so we're going to be looking at this very important role in the society where over time, from the Middle Ages, when there was a very high authoritarianism in the society, when that authority began to go down in the society, the church, and the state, individualism took its place. It filled the vacuum. And instead of having authority outside in a wider society, the authority became internalized. And so I became my own authority. And that is basically the philosophy of individualism that has arisen in North America and beyond in the last 200 to 300 years. So John Donne was a poet and English poet, and in 1611 he sensed, as many artists often do, they sense a change before most people because they are so sensitive, and he wrote this Old English poem reflecting on the great changes he saw in the society towards individualism. And let's go over that poem. It's really quite instructive. He begins by saying, "'Tis all in pieces, all coherence gone." You know, the society used to be united under one authoritarian figure, but as those authoritarian figures faded away, everything began to be broken up. All just supply and all relation. Prince, subject, father, son are things forgot. So the normal relationships that had existed for about 1,000 years in the Middle Ages, these things are beginning to be forgotten. And now he talks about individualism. For every man alone thinks that he hath got to be a phoenix, and that then can be none of that kind of which he is, but he. So he says everyone has to be a phoenix that arises from the dust of the, the tail of the phoenix is a life that arises from the ruins. So from the life of the ruins of the hierarchy of the Middle Ages, rose that every man was now to rise as an individual, and that then can be none of that kind of which he is, but he. And so this is an early reflection by an artist about the destruction of the Middle Age hierarchy and the rise of individualism within the people of the society. Alex de Tocqueville was a French sociologist who came to North America in the middle 1800s to investigate this emerging individualism that was arising in North America. You know, I often tell people that the greatest export of North America is not a good, it's its culture. Everyone wants to be like an American, speak like an American, dress like an American. And so our culture is exported all around the world. And Alex de Tocqueville, who was a trained sociologist, came to North America, and notice what he wrote about this North American culture, this culture of individualism that was arising. Each person behaves as though he is a stranger to the destiny of others. As for his transactions with his fellow citizens, he may mix among them, but he sees them not. He touches them, but does not feel them. He exists only in himself and for himself alone. So this is the extreme individualism. Even though you might live in a large city, even though you might live in a dorm, even though you might have a class, even though you might be among people, people don't know who you are. You're a stranger. Um, People don't feel you. People don't understand you. And so here you have 150 years ago, a French sociologist reflecting upon the culture here in North America. Now, it's very interesting that the passenger trains, were invented in Europe in the 1800s again. And as we see here on the right, the seats were facing one another so that when you were on the passenger car, you could have a conversation with your fellow passenger. Now, when the passenger trains were brought to North America, very interestingly, the people in North America looked at this arrangement of the seats and they said, you know, we're not comfortable with this. So they made a very slight but very profound modification in the seating, which we still have today in our public transportation. And look what North America did to the seating that had been in Europe. Now, instead of seating face to face with one another, you were seeing the back of a person's head. Why did the people in North America do this? Because when you get on a train, when you get on a plane, when you get on a bus, the last thing you want to do is face a stranger. So we are going to turn around the paradigm. We are not going to face one another. We are going to face each other's backs. And by the way, most churches are like this today, showing the deeply ingrained individualism here in North America. You know, it's very interesting here in North America. As soon as the baby gets brought home from the hospital, it has its own bed. It often has its own room, and you know the baby has been with the mother for 9 months. And now it is put in an environment where it's all alone. And of course, what's the baby going to do? It's going to cry. And so the parents come in. You know, I had 2 children with my wife, and I know all about it. You come in. Do you need something to eat? Do you need to be changed? Well, if you're okay, then you just have to deal with the loneliness and the darkness. And this is how we raise infants in North America very early in life to be independent. Whereas in Asia, the children often sleep with their parents in their bed until they're in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. I remember so well my son Jimmy went on a field trip to a space camp in the 7th grade. And his best friend Pierre was in the same cabin he was. And so the first night, Jimmy hears his friend Pierre crying a little. And Jimmy asks him, Pierre, why are you crying? He says, this is the first night I have ever slept alone from my parents. And so we see here in North America, even from infanhood, we reinforce this standalone, independent living type of arrangement that is not always experienced in other parts of the world. It's very interesting that one reason why we have privacy and independence and individuality in North America is because of our standard of living. You know, if you think about it, the more money a person has, the more private they can become. For instance, if a person doesn't have much money, they have to live in an apartment. They have to take the bus. They have to take United Airlines. They have to be with people. But as the wealth increases, you get your own house, you get your own car, and now you can be more private. And one of the goals of a lot of people around the world is to get enough money so they can have more privacy. A private house, a private car, and their own airplane. You know, I was riding my bike up by Valley Center. It's a town near me, just east of Escondido. Excuse me. And I looked over on the side of the road and I noticed a airline strip. And I say, wow, what is that? I never knew there was an airport here. So when I got home, I looked up on the internet and I found this community that is very interesting. Each of the houses has its own house and its own hangar. And so when you buy into this community, you not only have a private house, you have a private hangar and a private airstrip. So you don't have to go down to San Diego or you don't have to drive down to the airport on the freeway. You just get on your airplane. You can go to Phoenix. You can go to Los Angeles. And you talk about privacy. These people don't have to go to a normal airport to get around. They have an airport right outside their front door. If you have enough money, you can afford these things. You know, in my doctoral dissertation, which by the way, you will be reading part of as your reading assignment, what I found that the culture that existed in the New Testament church 2,000 years ago was a community culture. And the culture we have in the West is an individualistic culture. And because of that, the church operates on a far different level. See, I had in my mind, why did the church grow in the first century and is not growing in our century? Well, the main reason is because of individualism. Back in the first century, people were rarely alone. Private moments were rare. You even took baths together. You even went to the bathroom together. We can't imagine that in our individual Western culture. But back then, you were rarely alone. So to go to church and be part of a group, that was part of the normal lifestyle. But in North America, where we are alone a lot of the time, going to a church with a group of people, you go, oh, that's not something I am used to. Notice what it says here in Acts 2:46. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. So the New Testament church met together every day. They ate together every day. It's very interesting during this COVID-19 crisis. In some ways, in weird ways, it has brought us together because now through social media, through Zoom, etc., we can bridge the gap of time and space. And people are saying we are going through something common together. I notice in my neighborhood, a lot more people are walking. And when you meet them, of course, you keep your social distance. But since we are all experiencing the same pandemic, it seems like it's brought us closer together. We have our masks, we have our social distancing. So people are brought together by an experience. And so we are starting to experience that again, the communal nature of the first century. We're going to be looking at music in a couple weeks, but a song that was written by Bon Jovi in 2000. I know that's like 1,000 years ago, and some of you were barely born in 2000. But notice what it says. The words, it's my life, it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. My heart is like an open highway. Like Frankie said, I did it my way. And so, Frank Sinatra sings that famous song, I took the blows and I did it my way. There was a song that I was raised on in my teenage years. It's my life and I will do what I want. Well, this type of independence, of course, has its positive side. Most of the Nobel Prizes are won in the Western countries, because if you want to think outside the box on something, do something really creative, you have to be somewhat individual. If you come from a community society, then you're afraid to think outside the box. So in aspects of creativity and creating something, having a creative mind is very beneficial in Western society. But Ecclesiastes 4:12 brings up the positive aspect of being together with other people. Ecclesiastes, which was written by King Solomon, said, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not quickly broken. So Solomon is trying to say, if you're all by yourself, if you are a tree and you're all by yourself and the wind, this powerful wind comes, you might be blown over. But if you're part of a forest of trees and the wind comes, then you will be protected. I know some of you might ride bike, and I ride bike, and in the Tour de France, you have the domestiques, and they are the people on your team who protect you from the wind, and so you conserve your energy. So at the last moment, climbing up the hill or for the sprint, you have the most energy, and hopefully you can sprint or blast up the hill to win the stage. And so in some parts of life, it's wonderful to be an individual. In other parts of life, especially when we're struggling, when we need to be protected from other influences, being part of a community can be a very positive thing. Your assignment number 2 is please compare and contrast Western individualism with that of the New Testament community as brought out in the lecture. So what I want you to do in the assignment is think about your own life, how much of an individual you are. Some of you are from Asia. You have a more communal understanding. Some of you are from Hispanic culture, and there also tends to be more community orientated. So I want you to deal with this balance between being an individual and being part of a community, whether it's a family, a school, a work environment, etc., a friend in environment. I would like you to deal with that issue in your assignment. For next week's lecture, we're going to be looking at culture itself, the elephant in the room. Culture isn't often talked about. The elephant in the room analogy is there's an elephant in the room, but you're not paying attention to it. So what do? You avoid it. You walk around it. So we're going to be talking about culture and how it affects our everyday lives. And I hope you will enjoy that lecture next week as we go forward in the class. God bless you all, and I look forward to speaking with you in the forum and also our Zoom meetings every Monday at 7 o'clock. God bless you all.